offers a fun and memorable experience to players of all levels. In addition to great golf, we offer an array of amenities, including a driving range, short game practice area,
6:32. I'm calling this meeting of the Heritage Preservation Board to order. Okay. Can we have a roll call?
Mr. Sprecher,
Here.
Ms. Ryan. Here. Ms. Hallett. Here. Ms. Kaplan. Here. Mr. Brzezinski is not here. He let us
Okay.
know.
Okay, next, we're going to have public comments, but these are for comments in general. When you have the application come up, if you're concerned with that application, you can have your comments there. So if you have anything in general, public comment is open now. Okay, seeing none, we'll continue on. Okay, we don't have approval of minutes. Quasi-judicial. You go over that with
Yes,
us?
sir, Mr. Chair. How are you tonight? Andrew Dickman, your attorney.
Thank you.
So this is a quasi-judicial hearing. You're going to be discussing 3 items tonight. In a quasi-judicial hearing, you're sitting as judges, essentially. What you need to do are the following. One, in a minute, I'll be asking you to do any what are called ex parte disclosures, meaning any information or people that you may have come talked with or outside research you may have done outside of the confines of this hearing. Just need to disclose those on the record. And if you have none, just say none. Then at that time, also anybody who's going to speak before you tonight will be sworn in, and I will do that in a minute. Your role is to look for any competent, substantial evidence that would support the criteria as it's explained in the staff report. Your staff is an expert, is considered to be an expert, as in any applicant that may bring an expert with them. So your job essentially as quasi-judges is to weigh the competent, substantial evidence and compare it to the criteria that's listed in the code, which is also in the staff report. And you can see that your staff has done an analysis of that. And then staff will open it up and it'll go to the applicant. Then after that, you'd have a public comment period. And then you close the public comment period, then you deliberate, and then you take a vote.
Okay.
So with that, I think it'd probably be best to go ahead and do any ex parte disclosures for the first item.
Should we do that for all the items?
We could do that for all the items if you want. I mean, if it's simple enough for you to do that. Sometimes I try to separate it out because
Okay.
people do different things, but it's okay. Again, it's any outside conversations you've had, received any emails, gone by the property, looked at the property, done any of your own research online, things like that. That's what you want to disclose in order to not have a presumption of prejudice against the applicant.
Okay, does anybody have that? We'll go for all 3 of them. Okay, I've got, I look at the property, a lot of times, and I've done it on this time, so I'm disclosing that.
What was that? Are you disclosing?
Disclosing that most every building that I go through that comes through here, I'll look at.
You go by and look
I
at the
go by
property.
and check
Okay,
it.
fair enough. You've gone by and looked at the property.
Me too.
Yeah, that's about it.
Okay.
Okay, the first item is going to be application 2450. This is on North Spring Street, 36.
Mr. Chair, if I could swear in all the witnesses first
Okay.
too, all for that.
Another thing too, one of our members, this is her house, so
She has to abstain herself.
she's
yes.
abstaining.
I've got that. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry for everybody else who's going to be, sorry about that.
All right. Anyone who is going to testify before this board, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? All right. There you go.
Okay,
Ready?
Carolyn? Okay, Carolyn, you want to give a presentation?
We have application 2450 in front of us. This slide is showing you the location and context of the subject property. This slide shows you the location of the subject property within the National Register and local historic districts. This slide is just giving you some zoning context on the subject property. It's in the city's T4C Transect zone. And this is for 36 North Spring Boulevard, which is the Jacob Diston House. And they are seeking a certificate of approval for window replacement for the whole property. The current windows are a mixture of the original windows and some replacement windows. And this is the subject property as it appears in the Florida Master Site File currently. This is the 1909 Sanborn showing the property, although the property was built circa 1888 by Jacob Diston, who was the architect and the brother of Hamilton Diston, the founder of the city of Tarpon Springs. This site plan for the subject property. This is a historical photo provided by the applicant, which shows that the property has changed quite a bit over time. As you can see over here, we have some prairie style windows. The balcony area here has been opened up. There's been changes, over time. It's a building that changes over time. And the proposed project is these vinyl windows, replicating the style that were shown in the previous slide, and a mixture of what was shown in the previous slide and what is extant on the structure today. So here we're just showing you kind of a side by side of what it was at one point in time and what it is currently now. So, and this project's just showing you the different windows all throughout the property that are being proposed for replacement. So these are the relevant standards of review. Number one would be windows, doors, and entries, because we're looking at replacement windows. The proposed replacement windows would retain the historic dimensions that are currently existing, and that would be consistent with the original architecture. These proposed windows would replicate the style of the historic windows and include the prairie style, single hung, double hung, horizontal roller, and picture windows. Although the prairie style windows are typically associated with a craftsman style, we do have historical evidence that the structure did once have those. And then the next relevant standard for review is architectural features. And the windows are kind of always a distinctive architectural feature of a property. And these original wood windows would be replaced with vinyl windows. And although the project would destroy original materials, the proposed vinyl replacement windows would generally replicate the visual qualities of the original wood windows. Next standard for review is adherence with the Secretary's guidelines. Generally, the project does not strictly comply with the guidelines because it's proposing replacing the windows with other than original materials. And then finally, conformance with city code requirements. The proposed project could be interpreted as balancing the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan, although not strictly complying with the standards for rehabilitation and guidelines and our design review guideline manual. Typically, so when 50% or more of the windows are deteriorated or missing, it is permitted in our design guidelines review manual to do wholesale replacement. And typically we always want to do that with similar or original materials when possible. And then finally, We want to make sure that the architectural style is fitting, replacement of a single hung with a single hung. And then that tinted glass is not permitted. However, if you look at the very bottom, vinyl and vinyl clad windows are only acceptable in mid-20th century properties on non-visible elevations and on non-contributing properties. So that's where kind of the disconnect is between the design guidelines review manual and the proposed project. And based on that inconsistency, staff is recommending denial. However, if the HPB approves the project, I'm proposing that we condition approval stating that no tinted glass will be used and the typical, the CA will expire within 3 years if there's no building permit. And with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Board, do you have any questions?
No.
No, thank you. That's very thorough. Thank you very much. Applicant?
Mr. Chair, if I may, if I may ask the applicant, because I just want to get, since you are a board member, you're required to disclose on the record, so I want to get this on the record, that you're abstaining and why you're abstaining. And then, of course, within 14 days, you have to fill out the form with the clerk's office.
I am abstaining and she has the form.
Okay, so you're abstaining because this is your property,
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. That's what you're here for. Okay.
So Michelle Ryan, 36 North Spring Boulevard. So my husband and I purchased the home in 2016 and it was in bad shape. It was in severe disrepair. We repaired all of the windows, reglazed all of the windows in 2016. We have painted those windows twice since then with really expensive paint. Unfortunately, in our type of climate, wood just does not hold up in what we deal with today. So I'm typically replacing up to 3 windows a year, and to find a person that actually has the capability and skills to do that these days is next to impossible. I've been waiting 2 years for a guy, almost 2 years, about a year and a couple months. So it's getting harder and harder in houses like ours that we're trying to protect and trying to make sure that they stand for another 130 years, because ours is, like she said, circa 1888, so it's what's a 136-year-old house that is still solid as can be. And yeah, it's changed a lot. It's been bricked. We've changed a lot of the doors out that have been here so that we're using materials that are going to hold up to our weather and climate. And as you guys know, we just went through hell with 3 hurricanes in a row. And I honestly don't have the energy to board my house up one more time. And I can only reach the bottom. Our house is really tall. So when we have to board up, that means we have to board up from the inside upstairs. So when we do that, we're screwing into the wood windows, and it's a tough thing to do. So trying to protect the house, when we do the whole house, you have to put impact windows. So when you put an impact window in, the glass is a low E glass. There is a slight sheen to it. It's kind of a yellowy looking because it's impact. So there's no choice as far as like colors that they come in on the glass piece itself. There are different colors of vinyl you can use. So we thought tan would be a nice softening color to go with instead of a white, which would really pop out and not go well with the architecture. But I think that it's a good thing for the house, not to mention my pocketbook, not off the bat anyway. This is a $100,000 investment we're making in the house. We did investigate to put in wood windows. The budget on the wood windows was $315,000. So I don't know about you, I can't afford that. The finance doesn't make sense financially to put that kind of money into the windows of the house. But I think that the vinyl will look good, and we kind of want to pay homage back to what it was. So that's why we went with the prairie style, which was what was in one of those older photos. But I think that overall, people are not going to see a significant difference in the way it looks. It's still going to look similar, but it's going to, and not to mention my electric bill every single month, because I have to do it balanced out. So I do the same kind of estimated deal every month, it's over $800. Because there's just, in a single pane window, there's no energy efficiency whatsoever. So you can literally feel the heat as you're walking through. You can feel the humidity in the house. So it forces us to have to run air conditioning more to protect our furnishings from the humidity. I think that's about all that covers it. If you guys have any specific questions as to the material, I'm sure I can answer them.
Board, do you have any questions? Okay,
I think you've said it all.
yeah, I think so. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Public comments? Does anybody have public comments?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Dickman, staff. My name is John Terrapini. I live at 22 North Spring Boulevard. I'm the neighbor of Mrs. Ryan. Thank you for your time and volunteering for the board. I'd like to congratulate the staff on accurately reflecting what the code says. Unfortunately, it doesn't accurately reflect what's happening on the ground right now in preserving and protecting old homes. The materials that are available now to rebuild wood windows, you could rebuild them every 6 months, and that the materials just rot out because the wood's no good that you get. Not to mention the storm. So I think we should, thank the Ryans for preserving the home, and it's true that the code says that, that those materials should be for mid-century houses, but if we want these old houses to remain, as long as the look from the street, if you're standing on the street and it looks like it was built in 1888, I think we've accomplished the goal. We've gone from being historical preservationists to historical preservationists at that point. I stay in historic places around the country, and a lot of places, the windows have been replaced, but visually they look the same. And I can tell you from living in a house that was built in 1887, right next door, that the materials that you get just don't last. So there has to be some compromise to maintaining the integrity of the architectural sensibilities and visual, but at the same time allowing for the protection of the property. So, and just for the record, I served on the board of the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation for 10 years. I was an officer for 6 and the president for 2, and I hold the highest award in historic preservation in the state, the Carl Weinhardt Award. So having said that, I would encourage you to please allow the Ryans to move forward with their preservation of their home. Thank you. Unless you have a question.
Questions?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Terrapini. Comments? Is that all the public comments? Okay, we're going to close that. And does the staff have anything else to say?
Nothing further.
Okay, I'm going to entertain,
Can you give me that piece of paper? Wait,
yeah. Okay, we need to have a,
wait a minute, I gotta find it. Okay,
motion.
motion. Okay. I move to accept Miss Ryan's proposal for, is that the step 24-50 project as presented
Okay, it's presented and with the staff's recommendation.
with the staff recommendation of no tinted glass other than what is, well, I guess it's they only make it with a little tint. They only make the glass with, yeah. But nothing extra.
No dark tint.
No, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, it's impact glass, so it does have a slight
Slight tint.
yellow kind of tint to it, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the motion would be for no tinting other than what's normal
right.
for the impact
Right.
windows.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to say all that? There will be, the motion is for no tinting other than what the impact windows have. No?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, do I have a second? Any discussions? Okay, two things. One, Mr. Terrapini, you're exactly right
It is,
about the windows and the wood and the change the material. I've seen this a lot, where you just cannot find the wood you used to
Right.
have, and you can't find the people to do the work. You know, so you're gonna have to, the goal is to protect the house
right.
and keep the look at the look as close to it as you can.
And
Okay.
it's 100 years old. You know,
Yeah.
has to have new,
For that.
Yeah.
Okay, any more comments? Are we ready for a vote? We have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Kaplan?
yes,
Ms. Hallett?
yes.
Mr. Sprecher?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Finally,
Okay, congratulations. Okay, next on the agenda
gotta play back and forth.
is,
Oh,
does she have to do anything, say anything to be back in the committee?
Just let the record reflect that the board member has now come back onto the board
Okay,
for the other items on the record.
for the other two, okay. Okay, we're gonna go on to application 2461. This is on 155 East Tarpon. This is a porch. You want to put on it?
So this slide is showing you the location of the subject property at 155 East Tarpon Avenue. Here's its location within the national and local historic districts. And the applicant is seeking a certificate of approval to restore the historical balcony and transom windows at the circa 1905 contributing structure. The subject property is a two-part masonry vernacular commercial building. That's known as the W.H. Gorley Building. Notable remaining architectural features include the rusticated and smooth concrete block exterior, large plate glass storefront display windows on the first floor, and 3 recessed entrances. Some interesting notes about this property. It was constructed for W.H. Gorley and originally housed a tailor pressing shop and grocery store on the first floor with apartments on the second floor. Subsequently, the building included a dry goods store, menswear shop, hardware store, and the second floor continued use as residential space. This is what the subject property looks like in the Florida Master Site File currently. This is it shows it on the 1909 Sanborn, and as you can see here, this yellow indicates a wooden balcony that was there. Here it is on the 1913 Sanborn, and again on the 1919 Sanborn. This is a historical photo I was able to pull up. If you can see, the balcony was supported by a rusticated block, but you can see there was a wood balcony with some, looks like iron railing and a shed roof there. And this is another historical photo from, looks like about the 1980s, showing how that has been all stripped away. And this is what the facade currently looks like. This is some street views and context of where we're talking about in our downtown, kind of the heart of our downtown district. And this is the renderings for the proposed project. Note that The balcony would be replaced, the transom windows above the storefronts would be restored. And it has a very similar look to that historic photo. It may not be using the rusticated block for supports, but the kind of simple style that they're proposing is absolutely in keeping with the architectural design of the property. And this is just kind of showing the above view plan, how they're planning around the tree, so we don't have to worry about our tree. And then all of these standards of review really apply. New construction consistency, while this would be new construction, it's restoring a significant architectural feature of the historic property. The windows, doors, and entries would not be changed. We'd actually be kind of restoring that doorway to a doorway use again, up on the second floor there. The neighborhood and district context, we definitely would fit in. So we see next door, it has a very similar balcony right next door. The roof shape and texture is not going to be changing the main structure's roof, but there is a proposed shed roof with the proposed new balcony, which would replicate what was historically there. It would actually restore the size, massing, and shape of the historic structure and bring back some of the original architectural features that are consistent with its original period of construction. Would generally conform with the Secretary's guidelines and would conform with all of the city code and comprehensive plan. So, we're one of the main points is that this was a deteriorated historic feature of the building that was removed, and now we're going to have an opportunity to replace that. So staff is recommending approval with the following conditions. That the balcony and transom restoration will be constructed as illustrated in the application. Any deviation from those plans will require consultation with city staff prior to construction and may require additional approvals from this board. There was no specific product information for the building materials in the application. I would request, if the board feels comfortable, that those be reviewed by city staff as they go through the building permit process. Alternatively, the board could specify specific materials that they would like to see used. And then again, that the certificate of approval would expire in 3 years. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions? No? Okay. Do we have the applicant here?
I'm bringing my board, even though you've seen it. I paid for it and I love it and I show it to everybody, so I'm going to bring it up here for you too. I'm Christy Howard and I live at 915 Bayshore Drive, and I am the LLC of Balanced Directions that purchased the building at 155 East Tarpon Avenue. And it does house my business and some other future businesses coming, the Healing Hedge, which is mine. And when I had the opportunity to buy the building, I just really felt strongly that I wanted to be the owner operator in that building. I think there's a little difference than just having tenants when I live there, my business lives there. And I've always admired Two Frogs and how they've had their balcony. And upon a little digging, I found out that my building used to have that same balcony. And I'm eager, but not in a hurry to do it. It's going to take some planning, so I need the 3 years to get the permits issued, but I am happy to work with the city and the board to decide what materials to use. I want to get it back to as much original as possible and in keeping with Two Frogs next door. Like, I just, so that it really looks good. I think it'll look nice on the street to have that done. So eager to make it kind of match and fit how it was. And I was excited to see that photo that showed the brick, I guess, pilings. I hadn't seen that one until I think Caroline found it. If we can use the posts, I don't know if that's even feasible, but again, just want to do the best we can to get it as close to what it was.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any questions?
Do you have any
like ideas in your head, what kind of materials, like the roof, it looks like it's a standing seam metal roof. Is that kind of your visual?
Yes, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna take leadership from John and Cindy Terrapini because they've been through a lot of this, and I'm lucky enough to have some guidance from their, depth of experience there. Mr. Terrapini was a part of the Two Frogs restoration. I want it to look like it did before, and then also in keeping with that structure as well, and just whatever kind of fits and whatever materials are suggested. Mr. Hoffman, who did the drawings, I know he's been involved in a lot of preservation. So I just feel like if I take the input from all of the folks that know these things and get it together with the
elevation
drawings.
looks fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, the transoms, are those there today, or are they just covered up?
They're just covered up, and I can't wait to peel it back and see if there's glass under there. I know when they did that at Two Frogs, they found out the glass was still there. It may not be there. And so then we'll kind of cross that when we get there. But, now it's just blocked off, and then there's that awning that kind of hangs low. I don't know when that was installed, but, it kind of comes down pretty low. And I feel like this will just really lift up the building. Now, there will be a notch for that tree. I think there's a side view that shows where that tree's growing. It will have to kind of be notched out to make room for that, but we can't let go of any trees. So we're just going to kind of work around it.
Will the deck be a solid material? So like if you're walking under it, it gives you some shelter from rain?
Yes, it will just basically replace the awning. No need for the awning. It'll act as that. That's how I'm envisioning it. Actually, a young lady who works for me lives upstairs above Two Frogs. And so I've been able to go up there and kind of see how it even looks. And it's just a nice way to kind of view the Tarpon Avenue.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's very good. Okay. I think do we have any public comments?
Seems like it's my night, huh?
Mr. Tarpon Avenue.
John Terrapini, 22 North Spring Boulevard. As Ms. Howard mentioned, my family does own the building next door, the Two Frogs building. And just to give you a little history of the street, when we first bought the building years ago, we tried to put the balcony back, and we couldn't do it because the state of Florida had Tarpon Avenue. And then many years, we did restore the building and used canvas awnings and things like that. And there was this door upstairs that, went to nowhere. Then later, at the time, Mayor DiDonato started the process of taking the street back from the state, and so it would be a local street. And when that happened, we went back to the city and got a certificate of appropriateness and re-put the deck, the balcony out with a shed roof over the balcony. And Ms. Ryan, that's what keeps the rain from going down. It is I'm pretty sure it's like a 2x6 or 2x8, but it has seams, but the shed roof above the balcony keeps the rain from wetting the pedestrians. But we're very excited to have, people invest in downtown and put capital back into the town. And so we're really excited about Mrs. Howard's proposal. And I know it has a staff recommendation of approval, but we just wanted to lend our support and any kind of background that we can give Ms. Howard, we will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. That's it right there. Hang on one second. Okay, any more public comments? Okay, hearing none. Any closing remarks from the staff? No. Okay. And I'm going to bring it back to the board. There you go.
Okay.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Okay, I'll try again. I make a motion for project title 24 61, to be accepted as read with any staff recommendations approved. And, yeah,
Yes. Good, is that? As recommended by the staff.
I believe the motion was that you were making is that you are recommending approval of the application
Right.
with any conditions or recommendations from the staff.
right.
Okay, second?
I'll second. Oh,
Okay.
there you go.
Any discussions? No? Great. That was very good, thank you. Let's go on to a vote then.
Yes.
Okay,
Kaplan,
Yes.
Ms. Hallett,
Yes.
Ms. Ryan,
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher.
yes,
It'll be
Congratulations.
fabulous.
it's gonna look good.
It'll look fabulous.
Okay, now we'll go on to the last one here. Excuse me 1 second. Okay, we're gonna do application 2471. This is for Mercer Building. It's 106 Mears, yeah. 106 East Tarpon. This is for some replacement of windows. Staff, can run
yes.
through this again?
So, this is the location and context of the subject property, also on East Tarpon Avenue. Its location within the National and Local Historic District. Zoning context, it is in our special area plan. And the applicant is seeking a certificate of approval to replace non-original aluminum windows with vinyl 1/1 single hung windows at the contributing structure at the subject property. The subject property was constructed in 1914 for Ernest Mears, who was a successful sponge trader and an insurance agent. The building contained the Royal Theater, which, as a fun side note, once hosted Will Rogers, the Tarpon Springs Post Office, and Western Union. The Hotel Mears was located on the second floor, and this second floor, I don't know if you've ever noticed it from an aerial, it utilizes an H pattern to maximize lighting into those rooms. So it's a real neat design because it's one of our few architect design structures. The architect M. Leo Elliott, who was a leading architect in Florida and the 5th licensed architect in the state. So this shows the picture from the Florida Master Site File. The location of the building on the 1919 Sanborn. Here you can see that H construction there. Here's some historical photos of the building. Life over time. And this is how the structure appears today. A little bit of context in the surrounding area. And these are the photos submitted by the applicant of all the windows that are proposed for being replaced. I will note that the windows proposed for replacement are all on the second floor, none of the first floor, just the second floor is what's being proposed to be replaced. You can see some of the damage here that they're dealing with. So this is the proposed project. All of those numbers there indicate a window that they're proposing for replacement, and it's the product sheet for the windows they're proposing to use. So we have a few standards for review that are relevant to the project. Obviously, windows, doors, and entries. The historic dimensions of the windows will be retained, so they're not changing the opening sizes of the windows or anything like that. Again, these are non-original windows. They're aluminum frames. They've already been replaced. But as you look back at those historic pictures, they have always been 1/1. I believe the original construction was double hung, but still it's going to give that historical appearance from the street. Windows again are always an important architectural feature. We do need to look at the secretary's guidelines. So the most appropriate thing to do would be to replace them all with original materials, which would be wood windows. However, these are already replacement windows, they're already aluminum. And again, we do have the issue of the design review guideline manual, which states that vinyl and vinyl clad windows are only appropriate on mid 20th century properties, on non-visible elevations, and on non-contributing properties. So due to that inconsistency, staff is recommending denial. However, you could again say that this project is balancing the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan and our design review guidelines, because it's ensuring the continued existence of the structure, although not strictly complying with our review guidelines. So if the HPB decides to approve the project, I'm recommending that we condition approval with tinted and or reflective glass. That's a no-no, don't use that. Just to clarify that the masonry sills outside of the windows will be preserved and that nothing will be done to harm them. And then again, that the certificate of approval will expire in 3 years. If you have any questions, I can answer them now.
Is there something unique about the masonry sills?
Right.
I think they're pretty typical. You can see.
Okay.
You just see here, they're just kind of a neat architectural feature of the relief, It's an original architectural feature, and we just want to make sure that we clarify that where those are present, those were not going to be damaged or removed in the window replacement.
Carolyn, that's all wood that looks like it's been built out around it in that particular one that they're showing.
Right.
Is that because the old window was a different size?
The applicant can maybe better answer that question, but yeah, I'm guessing these were just kind of shoved in there to try and replace the old windows.
And with them replacing all of them, is the code not to have impact?
No, that doesn't apply to historic structures.
Okay. Any more questions? Thank you very much, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Okay, do we have the applicant here? Okay.
Good evening. My name's Bill Lorenzo, 7021 North Clark Avenue. Bear with me, I'm getting over food poisoning. So the windows that are in there now, the aluminum ones, the opening is already shrunk down some because when the wood windows were taken out, they just used the framing from the old wood windows and they stuck them in there. The problem with this is that everything around those windows is completely rotted away. They all leak. Tenants downstairs are getting flooded out. The ones that are renting upstairs are getting flooded out. The windows will have to be pulled out. All that wood's gonna have to come out. We're gonna have to reframe everything, put the new windows in. On the outside, they will have to re-stucco to returns back in to make it look exactly what was there. And what else? And like I said, it's just there's 66 windows in this building. And if you were to actually take one of these windows out and look, because it's been leaking for so long, that brick structure is deteriorating. So literally when I'm putting these 2x8s or 2x12s that are going to be on the inside reinforcing everything, they're actually holding part of that brick building up because it's just not, it's falling apart. So this is really something that really needs to be done because that building is going to end up being non-usable if it doesn't start being brought up to code. So, you have any questions?
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, are you going to be able to save all the sills?
The sills they're already down. There's, actually, we just had the roof redone on the building. And the sills, none of them are gonna be messed with. So you have, on those interior windows, they all have a small sill on them. The the biggest issue is the front windows, because the side windows, they just slapped them in there. The front windows, they actually framed out, if you can see, they framed the top, it was bow top originally. They framed it out so square windows are in there, and at the top, that little bow that's on the top is actually framed down and then painted black to match the whole building. So what we're gonna do is put the same flat window, square window in there, and we're gonna frame that arch a little section down, and then we'll stucco to it to make it look more to the original.
Sounds good. Any more questions?
Any thought to the color? I mean, I love your building. I love the paint color you guys picked.
Right.
I almost wish you would have went with a different color than white on the windows. Architecturally, it really kind of looked good.
Well, to stay within the budget that he wants to use, we were with the white because the white was already there. But if we go with the color, those windows are gonna double in price.
Double, but I get you.
Yeah.
It's already, just to be perfectly honest with you, I proposed this to him. I'm his contractor, and he was already on the fence on it because he's got so much money he's been dumping into this. The roof was super expensive, and they've had to go back 3 or 4 times because the actual structure below it, they've repaired as much as they could, but it's still leaking. So we've had the roofer back 3 or 4 times to try to get it taken care of, because the one tenant, the largest tenant down there, she's been flooded out several times and has lost, this last storm, she lost 6,000 in that store alone. So,
Okay. Any more? Thank you very much.
thank you.
Okay. Do we have any public comments? Okay, hearing none. Continue on. Staff, do you have any closing?
I just wanted to mention that I looked quickly at the product sheet, and they are proposing impact windows. So, just for clarification.
Okay. Okay, but not hearing anything else, I want to bring it back to the committee. Do I hear a motion?
Michelle, do you want to make a motion? No?
What's the number on it?
2471.
Here, if I could just clarify something. So the same condition on the impact windows, that the only tinting would be what comes from the manufacturer, correct?
I think we'd probably say there's no intentional tinting. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make a motion. Application 2471, to accept staff's recommendations with the exception of the impact class being standard as far as the way it comes from the factory.
Okay.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, any more discussions on this? Okay, can we have a,
What a project.
Ms. Kaplan?
Yes.
Ms. Hallett?
Yes.
Ms. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Sprecher?
yes. Congratulations, thank you very much.
What a
Thank-
project.
Thank you for your time. Okay, that's the last one, so. Do you have any parting
We
comments?
do have a discussion item for you that my colleague, Pat McNeese, is going to be discussing.
Oh, hold, hang on a second, yeah, I missed that. Okay,
He's gone.
okay. We're gonna have to do that. Hang on one second. Okay,
I do
okay, I'll
have,
call the item.
Yeah.
Okay,
I do have extra copies of the draft ordinance. Does anyone need one?
okay, now. Okay, are you gonna give a presentation on this? Now, these are changes in ordinances?
Yes, Pat McNeese, Planning Supervisor. It's nice to be here. Yes, we are bringing forth an ordinance that is a change to your Article 7 that you normally operate under the Heritage Preservation section of the code. And the main thrust of this is to provide for what's called a neighborhood conservation overlay mechanism. So the Planning and Zoning Department in the city has been working on some different community planning projects and studies in the last year or two, some of which you guys are aware of. You've been involved with those, such as the Greektown and Sponge Docks area. We have some studies and initiatives going on at the Union Academy area. So one thing that came out of these studies, which identify planning issues, neighborhood issues, development, new and existing development, infrastructure, economic, all those kinds of things. But one of the things that came out of the development aspect was a desire to maintain a certain character or certain features of some of these areas. So to do that, the idea was to come back with a neighborhood conservation overlay mechanism, which is a mechanism that allows flexibility. It's not as stringent or detailed as the traditional historic ordinance and guidelines that you all work under. It's designed to provide the area or the citizens to address those issues they specifically want to address with some flexibility. So basically the ordinance, this is Article 7, and you'll see on the first page in 106.01, unfortunately, these don't all have page numbers, so I apologize for that. But section 106.01, where you see that first change, kind of explains the intent of the historic district as opposed to the neighborhood conservation overlay and what those are going to be intending to address. And then if you flip over mainly to section 108, that's the section where you already had designation of historic districts and landmarks. That's the procedure for those. What we've done is add in and update this to include that procedure modified to adopt a neighborhood conservation overlay district. So we've set out the procedures and processes here for that. And then the other main section having to do with NCOs is back in this new section 118, where it establishes the purpose of a neighborhood conservation overlay district. And I'll just read that real quick. It's intended to help preserve significant historical, cultural, or architectural assets from demolition, encourage adaptive reuse of existing structures, and promote consistent development patterns. So that's the overall purpose. The idea is really with this ordinance tonight is to kind of lay the groundwork and the framework for and a procedure for going ahead and establishing NCOs where we want to. Could be once established that it becomes more detailed. It may be, could establish its own board. There's lots of ways it could go. But right now, what we've got in here is just the basics. You'll see in that new section 118, we've only included addressing the very basic issues of new structures, additions, and demolition of structures. So those would be items that if we do establish an NCO, we would say, well, in this NCO, we want to regulate all those, or we only want to regulate demolition. You would make a decision based on what the citizens' desire is and what the character of the district is to decide where that NCO starts, essentially. So that's what this section does. And then the process is really, right now, we haven't established a new process other than using your established procedures, you as a board, to review these items and the new NCOs. And that's kind of where we decided it'd be a good idea to start out, get this mechanism going, get it in place, and see where it goes and how we can use it. The ordinance also has some tweaks and some corrections to your existing ordinance. We went back to the old certificate of appropriateness term, which is really more appropriate. That's what everybody else the state uses, things like that. I'm not sure why we switched to approval, but so there are some changes in here that kind of clean up the ordinance. Archaeological is another section that was cleaned up to reflect what is actually done in practice by staff. So there are some cleanup items. And what we're recommending tonight is that you take a look at this, discuss it amongst yourselves, and make a recommendation to the board as to whether you think it should go forward, if there's any changes or concerns or any issues you'd like to address. This is not an official public hearing. It's, it was on your agenda as a discussion item because you do not, you're not an official public hearing for the ordinance purpose. But we would recommend that you take public comment from those that want to comment on the ordinance this evening and give us your thoughts and a recommendation for the Board of Commissioners. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll be glad to
We have
answer any questions.
Well, kind of catch me a little flat-footed on this one. I'm sorry. Really need to go over that a little bit more. Okay. Now you had, I didn't catch this in the package. I'm sorry. This was in the package, all the.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've got extra copies.
Yeah, but I'd like some time to look at it, tell you the truth.
Okay.
Do we have anybody let's just do this. Do we have anybody set up to give a public comment on this? Okay. Well, let's go through the public comment. Now, do we approve this or this?
So it's part of your land development code. So your planning and zoning board, acting as the local planning agency, will have to review this before it goes to the Board of Commissioners. It'll be an ordinance form. So then you'll have 2 hearings at the Board of Commissioners. But you all being this is your wheelhouse. It's affecting the area of the code that you all deal with the most. And I believe what staff is doing is just asking for your feedback on this. And in addition, adding another layer of public discourse by having it on the agenda here to get a little more input if there is. But if I don't know what kind of timeline you all are on. It sounds to me like the board members desire more time to review
I would like
some
to
of
have
this.
another month.
It is in the packet. I did read it. It's all in strike through, underline, and
I didn't catch that one. I apologize. Do we have any more discussions on this?
Yes, and this has been advertised for the November 18th Planning and Zoning and the December BOC meetings. it could be deferred. I will say, I believe your December meeting may be fairly full. I'm not sure. So, I mean, we could bring it back for the December HPB. You've got, I think, a couple applications at least, maybe a busy agenda, but
Okay.
If that's
Is-
something
is
you
that-
would like to do,
Is that agreeable with you guys? Okay. Agreeable with you?
I'm still kind of looking through it.
Okay.
I mean, Pat, how different is this compared to, I mean, what we normally, as far as rules and how we evaluate cases, how different is this than what we typically do? I know it's,
it's very different. So this would be, this is just a very basic level. And some of the things that came out in the public process, especially for the Greektown and Sponge Docks area, is that we may be losing some structures. I guess, I mean, there's a couple of things, the gentrification issue and the, for lack of a better term, the kind of McMansion or inappropriate massing and scale. That was kind of the first level that may be going on when some of these older structures are demolished in favor of the newer structures. Now, some of that is we have non-flood compliant structures and people trying to raise them up. But that can be feel like that can be dealt with at some level as a design issue. But this ordinance tonight really lays the groundwork for that first basic level of kind of scale and massing and losing structures in a neighborhood that we're not sure we want to go there yet.
yeah, no, I think there's a need for that because there are some different things going on in that area to where some of the structures don't go with the neighborhood.
Yeah, but we haven't included yet the level of windows, doors, all those architectural features that you guys deal with every day, at least not in this iteration, so. Okay.
There was a public comment, right?
Yeah, no, let's have the public comment.
Tina Bukavalis, 115 Athens Street, and to introduce myself a little, I'm on the Pinellas County Historic Preservation Commission, as well as the Pinellas County Historical Commission, and I'm president of the Greektown Preservation and Heritage Association. And I certainly agree with everything that Pat has said about the need for the neighborhood conservation ordinance and mechanism. In fact, I think I'm the person that originally brought this to everyone's attention about neighborhood conservation districts. That being said, I think it's a great document that you have before you, these changes to the ordinance. But like every document, I think there can be some tweaks that make it more effective and plug some of the holes that can be used. So if you bear with me, I'm just going to go over, I have a few of these, and I'm just going to do it by number because I don't want to get too wordy here. So first of all, 106.01 A talks about historic districts. In previous drafts of this ordinance, it had not only a definition of historic districts that were locally designated, but also number 2 was about non-locally designated historic districts. This was taken out, but I think it's important to put in because for more than a decade, there has been a non-locally designated National Register district, which is the Greektown Historic District, which is the official name for the National Register in the state of the district that goes from the Sponge Docks to Tarpon Avenue from Pinellas down to Roosevelt. So, and in nowhere else, although you have such a non-locally designated historic district in the city, in no other place that I know of does the city ever acknowledge that reality. And it just seems like there should be some language about it since it exists. 106.01B, Neighborhood Conservation Overlay Districts. Number 3 talks about ensuring that new construction is consistent with the established identity of the district. In an earlier draft, I think, and here I would like to restore some wording, ensure that new construction and exterior building renovations are consistent with the identity of the district. And the reason this is so important, and exterior building renovations are important, is I have seen some egregious examples of things gone wrong, whole cities gone wrong, when this isn't followed with consistency with the historic architectural tradition. For instance, I visited Santa Fe, New Mexico, not long ago. Lovely city, but I was appalled to understand that the hotel I was staying in had started out as a wooden Victorian mansion, had been stuccoed over to look like a Pueblo building. And then I found out that had nothing to do with architecture in the city. All of that stuff had been done in the city, was not part of their architectural tradition, but just sort of an accretion and was not authentic. You know, here our traditional architectural buildings are Florida vernacular. We have no Greek building tradition other than St. Nicholas, which is a very modified American version of Byzantine architecture, and the sponge boats. But putting Greek architecture here is the same as putting Pueblo architecture in Santa Fe. So I think there's room to include a little bit more there. 108C2 talks about how petitions could be submitted for districts, and it says 51% of the land area as indicated by the vote of property owners for district designation by the BOC or the city planning and zoning department. I would also like to include a nonprofit civic organization, as was included in an earlier draft. And here's the reasons why, for also about the 51% of the land area. The 51% of the land area clause assumes 100% participation by property owners. And to understand realistic rates of participation in any civic thing, it's good to look at voting records and how people actually vote. According to county data, in Tarpon's March 2023 municipal election, only 14.4% of the electorate voted. In 1120 for the presidential election, only 78.1% voted. So, and that's the highest general participation in anything you vote for. It's a general rule. So it's absurd to base an ordinance on an overtly false assumption of 100% participation, which is what 51% would be basing it on. 100% participation. Instead, there are alternatives that are frequently used, such as notifying property owners by mail, by newspaper, by other public announcements, and after notifications, every board might hold hearings. Now, the other issue, the city has implied that inclusion of nonprofit organizations as petitioners are appropriate in their comp plan section in HIS 1.3.2, in which it says, quote, encourage the development of community-driven plans for historic districts to guide future preservation and complementary development. So I would suggest that since the city already suggests that nonprofits be involved in this, that you put that in this section as well, or restore it to the section. 108 point D6 also talks about support from at least 51% of affected property owners for a district designation. And has that ever, that again, that assumes 100% participation. I don't think that's ever happened anywhere. But including other entities could counteract this problem. If you reverted to the earlier draft, it mentioned that it specifies that, quote, unless waived for district designation, that the 51% would apply unless waived by the BOC, or if the nomination is submitted by the BOC, P&Z department, or a nonprofit city civic organization. Section 118.00, where it talks about the purpose. And currently it says to preserve historical, cultural, or architectural assets from demolition, encourage adaptive reuse of existing structures, promote consistent development patterns, promote all that is great, but it doesn't effectively protect district heritage and integrity if it specifies only demolition and does not deal with alterations to existing structures, as we have seen when I've given previous examples. So I would change that, that sentence to say, preserve assets from demolition, encourage adaptive reuse of existing structures, ensure that new construction and exterior building renovations are consistent with the district's integrity and established identity, and so on. And finally, just in 118.03, when it talks about certificates of appropriateness, I would add a category to construction activity, which would be alterations to existing structure, and then give out those specific items as it did for historic districts. Are there any questions?
Well, there's a mess up. Okay. Do you have all this written down?
Yes.
Okay, to where you could give us a copy of it?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'd like to study this, really.
Sure, I'd be happy to send it to you. I couldn't find a mechanism in which I could send directly to the board, so I didn't.
We can certainly post it with the next,
Okay.
if this is going to be
Okay.
continued, I'll take it and we'll provide it to the board in their packet.
All right, thank you, Pat. Thank you.
So Pat, did you go over those recommendations? Have you already considered these? I mean.
We did. As Tina mentioned, some of that was in earlier drafts. This went through, I believe, two discussions with the Planning and Zoning Board and a discussion with the Board of Commissioners. The ordinance has been around for a while. It was initiated in 2022, so that shows you. And based on some of the kind of direction we got, we did modify it a bit. And overall, I would just say, none of those things are completely objectionable overall. We're trying to establish the process. In fact, the last level Tina mentioned, maybe that does go into one of the NCOs, if that's what they want to do, to require the identity to be defined, the integrity, what renovations. Now you're getting into what you all normally do. The idea was we can't do anything without setting this process up. The idea is to set the process up now with the very basic concerns that were expressed, and then work from there with each individual district. Union Academy is a good example of a neighborhood where, it might be something addressing assembly of lots, some of the gentrification issues that may arise in a neighborhood that, let's face it, is not in a flood zone. Now it's become more and more attractive to buy properties. I'm not saying it's happening yet, but we can see things like that may be on the horizon. Buy properties, bulldoze something, and build something else. So every neighborhood's going to be different. So that's kind of what we were looking for, was to get this adopted as a starting point, and that's kind of the direction we've received.
But let me just say, if you don't put things like external structure renovations in here, then it's not open, from my understanding, for future consideration. It doesn't have to be, but that wording probably does need to be in here. So,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, I'd still like to, let's postpone this and we'll talk about it next meeting. Okay?
Could I just ask a quick question? Patricia, like how, as far as like timing, I mean, is this going to be a big problem if this goes off? Because there might be another way that board members can provide you with feedback.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering, if that might happen. I mean, we did pretty much have this on track for, to try to get it through in December, so this would shift everything to sometime in January.
So in the alternative, what you could do as board members individually, don't copy each other or whatever, but go and take what you've heard here, review that, and you can send Patricia directly your own comments on it, and that could be included in a presentation at the Planning and Zoning Board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that,
Because
that's just a way to just keep it on track.
Okay. I've got no problem with that.
And when was the planning, is it that's November
18th
18th?
is, well, that's the meeting. But yeah, the deadline, I would say November 12th, since Monday's a holiday, about a week from tomorrow, but November 12th, if you could give us some feedback.
Okay.
And I'll send you all an email to remind you.
Yeah, I like that.
And we will, Tina will send me your comments so we can get those to you so you can be reminded. And I guess we have more public comment.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Terrapini, live at 22 North Spring Boulevard. First, on this issue of y'all's review, I would call to your attention and to the attorney and Pat and Caroline, Section 228 of the city's land development codes has the powers and duties of the Historic Preservation Board. And under F5, it says to recommend to the Board of Commissioners amendments to this code, meaning that land development code that you're talking about, the building codes and the comprehensive plan for the city of Tarpon Springs. So I think you have a requirement in your code to hold a public hearing, because this is a public meeting. I don't believe this was an advertised public hearing on this item. Hold a public hearing, take public comment as you wish, and make a recommendation. So I would suggest that you really need to do that. And I would give you a couple things to think about, and I can also give my comments in writing. Just a couple of big concepts as you look at this. Hopefully you will continue it for a month so you can have an advertised public hearing like the code requires. First of all, back in April, this went to the Planning and Zoning Board, and I spoke then, and I said, you really need to separate out, it could be in the same article, but you need to have the historic preservation portion over here, the historic districts and landmarks. You need to have the neighborhood conservation overlay over here. Two separate sections of that overall article of the code. Some might be similar. For example, they're both going to be reviewed by you and then forwarded on with your recommendation to the Board of County, to the City Commission. However, the way it's written right now, those two things are merged in there, and there's really, it's very unclear as to how the process works, and B, what the standards of review are. For example, if you look at the standards of review for a district, it's all related to historic properties. You might have some neighborhoods that they're just protecting certain aspects of their neighborhood that are not necessarily historic. So I think you really need to separate those two things out, and hasn't been done. Secondly, this is a big issue for me, is I don't think you need any owner consent. And that's what's shown in here as 51%, both for a historic district, which we already have. All the properties that you've been dealing with in your agenda today were in the historic district. That was never a requirement in the historic district when it was started. And I don't think it should be for any future historic districts or for a neighborhood conservation district. If you do that, you're taking away the power of the Board of Commissioners to determine what is in the best interest of the city. And sometimes you're going to have some people come out, as Ms. Bukovalis mentioned. Getting people to participate in a mail-in ballot is number one, difficult, as we know. But number two, and I've seen this in other cities where I have worked in preservation, that having a ballot for someone to vote that yes, they want to be in this historic district or neighborhood conservation, fraught with problems. What if someone owns a property? It happens to have, it's one house, but it's on 4 lots. And those 4 lots are 4 different parcels in the county on the property appraiser. Does that person get 4 votes? Probably not. But if they have 4 lots or in 4 different places in the neighborhood, do they get 4 votes? Probably yes. And none of that is spelled out in here. It's just fraught with problems to have a voting, and I just think it's inappropriate. I trust you all as a preservation board, and I trust the commission as a board to make the best decision considering all the evidence. And I would take all the references out to a percentage. The other big comment I'd ask you to take a look at, and this is mostly in the definition section, there's references to cultural practices. And I understand that a cultural district may have cultural practices. However, you cannot regulate something that is intangible. You cannot regulate something that you cannot see or touch. You regulate buildings, you regulate districts, you regulate landscapes, you regulate archaeological sites, but you don't regulate the fact that people have Greek dancing on Sundays, on certain days. You just cannot regulate that. So that whole issue needs to be addressed. And this is not related to the Neighborhood Conservation District, but I noticed it, and I think if we're cleaning this up, we ought to go ahead and fix it now. Currently, when a case comes before you, the notice goes to everyone within 500 feet. For some reason, and this has been in the code for a while, but like I said, let's fix it now. If someone appeals your decision to the Board of City Commissioners, that notice is only 200 feet. Why? Why wouldn't the same people who were affected when you all made your decision and considered it get the same notice? So I would just suggest that get changed. That's section 111, point D. Then the last thing I would suggest for the staff to think about and for you to think about is that, and I happen to work for the city. I was fortunate to work for the city of Tampa when we adopted the first historic preservation ordinance, and we adopted the first district, which ironically, if you know Tampa, was Hyde Park. And that was done in the mid-'80s. What we put into that ordinance, and there were other historic districts that came later, Seminole Heights and others, but what we put in the ordinance as a requirement is that as each district was being considered, whatever geographic new district was being considered, that the design guidelines for that district be in draft form prior to the district being adopted. And what that does is it tells people with some clarity what you're going to regulate. And I think this would be critical in a neighborhood conservation overlay because each one's going to be different. It's not like a historic district where you have the same design guidelines for the whole historic district that we have today. You're going to have totally different regulations in each area to reflect that particular neighborhood. So you need to tell people, what are we going to regulate? As Ms. Bukovalis said, are you going to regulate exteriors? Are you only going to regulate demolition? Are you only going to regulate front porches? Are you only going to regulate drive? I mean, you can see where this is going. You need to tell people, and that obviously that would be developed with the particular neighborhood as to what they wanted to regulate in their community and how detailed they wanted it to be. So this is just some thoughts for y'all to think of as you review it. I would recommend that you do continue it. It's like Pat said, it's been around for a couple of years. I don't know that it's, there's some huge necessity to do it this month. And I think you have an obligation and requirement to actually hold a hearing and make a recommendation on it to the board. You are the subject matter expert. This is as Mr. Dickman said, this is your wheelhouse. So I'd recommend that you continue it. That'll give y'all a chance to review it again. Think about the comments that were made today, and you may have other comments at the next meeting. And I thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Chair, if I could, Patricia, please. There's been a comment that this is an improper hearing, essentially. I agree that the board is part of their powers is to make recommendations. Was this properly advertised?
This was advertised in the newspaper, this meeting. I was going to try to find that section of code, but I don't have
right
any
here.
internet.
No, I have it right
But
in
I
front of
don't
me.
know that we understand it to mean that this would be one of the official public hearings of an ordinance.
Well, it's
We
certainly,
have-
it's certainly legislation. Let me
Okay.
just get to the point. It does say part of the powers, among all the powers, to recommend to the Board of Commissioners amendments to this code, which is including land development codes, building codes, and the comprehensive plan of Tarpon Springs. But I just want to, for the record, make sure that this was advertised. It's been on the agenda. Yes, it's listed as a discussion item, but it's not, because it's not a quasi judicial item. It's a legislation that's being proposed. So it's clearly, I'm not pushing an agenda whatsoever. I was just simply asking whether there was a timeline that this needed to be met, and there was a comment made that perhaps this is procedurally not properly before you, and I'm going to opine that it is. But you can vote to continue it if you like.
Well, it's, problem I've got with it right now is, none of us are prepared for this. I'd like to take a look at the ordinance that we're talking about, because is this part of the ordinances on what's that book there?
What was on the agenda?
This is not part of the historic district design review manual.
No.
No,
guidelines. Okay,
it's
this
not.
is something different.
It's the land development code article that you all use. It sounds to me like you are, it sounds to me like you are not comfortable with making a decision or just providing individual comments. If you are not comfortable, let's go ahead and, I think staff would be fine with deferring it to the
So
next
staff
meeting.
is fine with
We
it.
want
Make
you
sure they
to-
get copies of everything so that they can read it and be prepared.
Yeah, I'd like to read it. You got my interest up.
All right. Okay.
And if you could, maybe on the agenda, perhaps say, discussion item with possible action,
Okay.
so that they can take
Sure.
a vote.
Right, and
So there's no
I have some
question that,
ideas for that.
so that there's no argument that this hasn't been properly before you,
Okay.
as has been alleged.
All right. Okay. And we have more public comment.
Well, I think I have maybe solutions. Can I go? Yeah. Georgiana Francis, 15 Athens Street. I'm also a member of the Planning and Zoning Board, but I'm not speaking on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Board. What I did want to point out was some of the, we have discussed this, I think at least probably 3 times, I think the P and Z Board as a discussion item. So Pat, maybe if in the next item that you notice for the HPB Board, if you could maybe clarify those meetings that we had, and then it would really benefit you all to actually look at those meetings and maybe even just the portion where we discuss it. So we're not, some of the stuff, the issues that were raised today have already been addressed. So if you put those things back in, we'll have to like readdress them because we've already taken them out. So it would be like almost a second or third time that, and it's just not really productive to do that. So, and the other thing I wanted to mention, which we have workshops coming up. So I don't think there is a big rush right now. I don't see why that would be a big issue, but we have workshops coming up for each of these, and maybe, Pat, we could put HPB with a joint workshop.
I can look into that, sure.
That way, like maybe a little bit towards the end. So, and I think as we discussed, maybe not even having it like here, maybe a little bit in a different area where it's a little bit more social, where people might come like from the Sponge Docks. And I really take issue with the whole, I do agree with everything that Ms. Terrapini said. She's an expert on this, as Mr. Terrapini is, as far as, we don't need the percentages because that's obviously not how the historical district downtown was put in. But as far as like the 100% and people not voting, believe me, the people at the Sponge Docks definitely do care. I personally walked the new city manager down there 2 weekends ago. And so this is a really important issue for everybody in town right now because they're rebuilding. So believe me, people will be participating. And if there's any fear of that, just, I mean, everybody who's been out voting recently, there'll probably be record numbers. So I just think that, moving forward, we have a new city manager. I think it'd be really good to start kind of working together with the Planning and Zoning Board, because a lot of what we do, we see the same thing. So, you don't have to watch those meetings, but it would really help, to watch certain aspects. And I think Pat can put that in the agenda. And then, like I said, maybe just have one of those workshops at the same time so we can all, look at those issues together. All right, thank you.
Yeah, I can certainly, I'll give you the history of all the discussions by Planning and Zoning Board and the Board of Commissioners, so you can look at those items.
Yeah, and they're way more in depth in the Planning and Zoning than the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
Cindy Terrapini, 22 North Spring. I did not allege that the hearing was improper. What I said was you have an obligation and a responsibility to make a recommendation. When y'all were talking just before I got up here about, Pat said, well, maybe everyone could send your comments to her and she could relay those to the Planning and Zoning Board and the Commission. That is not a recommendation of the board. So what I'm suggesting is that if you're not going to vote tonight on it and you're going to continue it, then when you continue it, you make your recommendation, you'll be fulfilling that requirement in the code. I'm not saying anything's improper tonight.
Yes, you did. You just said it. You're not taking a vote. That's what you're saying.
Well, it's pretty clear in the code that they're required to.
It doesn't say, no, it doesn't say vote. It says make recommendations.
Well, how do they make recommendations except by a motion, and the motion either passes or fails? That's how they make recommendations. You can't.
That's not the only way.
The board does it. What's the other way? The board can't individually make recommendations. That's not the board's recommendation. The only way a recommendation from a body, a group, is a motion and an approved motion from that group.
Okay, I get it.
Well, that is the fact. The Board of Commissioners doesn't make a decision one by one. They make a decision, the five of them vote on whatever the item is. So that's all I'm saying is that it was, if you're gonna follow the code and have this group recommend something, which is, as you said at the beginning, completely in their wheelhouse, something they know a lot about and deal with all the time, they're the most appropriate board to make a recommendation, and the code says they should. That's all I'm saying.
And all I'm saying is that it's been properly noticed. The board didn't choose to prepare themselves for a discussion, but that's fine. But you are making an allegation.
Trying to keep the board going in the right direction.
Okay. Well, right now, I'd like to have a little deliberation and, okay, we need to think about this. We do. Okay. Okay. I know what you're saying. I'd like to put in the record that, or in suggestion, that we discuss this next meeting, have a little discussion like this again. Okay?
Okay, so,
Okay, because I'm with Ms. Terrapini for a little bit, because if it's going to be a board recommendation, it's going to have to come from all of us. Okay?
right,
Okay, if it's not a board recommendation, it's just from individuals, and we can do it,
right.
at our
The,
leisure.
the idea would have been, what I would have asked for would have been a consensus to move it forward and then add your comments. But it sounds to me like you want to either vote or have a consensus to defer this. That would be, if you wish to do that, that would be to a date certain of December 2nd. Because I've advertised this hearing in the paper and PNC and BOC, so we will need to defer those to a date certain, which is fine. So that's what I would ask for.
That's what I think is appropriate. Do a agreement? Okay. Okay, so we'll continue this next meeting. Okay. Okay. Well, it was probably in there, just didn't catch it. Staff comments?
I do have one comment. We had a recent applicant who received a fraudulent email, was very, very good, according to our IT director, asking her to wire money to the city. they must have pulled from the BOC agenda. This was a conditional use that was heard by another board, wasn't one of yours, that had all the details, including, and it was signed, by the way, with my name. Very good email to the point where the applicant luckily called us to find out that they were trying to wire money and how to do that. We will start putting notices, but just for the public and everybody, the city will never, you've heard these warnings before, the city too will never ask you to wire money to the city or provide information over the phone, those sorts of things. So I just wanted to let you know. I don't know if people are looking at agendas or if that's the bad part of artificial intelligence, who knows? But it was a very good email and a very good invoice attached to it. So, yeah.
Okay. Board, you guys got any comment? Okay. Okay, then I'm going to call for adjournment. Time now is 8:08. Call this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Here it is in discussion. But this is all I have on the front page.